All right, welcome everybody. So we're so excited to have, I'm so excited to have Sam here tonight. He is a Microsoft MVP, technologist, author, speaker, gadget lover, and he works for Telerik as a progress developer advocate. I can leave you to introduce yourself, but I'm so excited for you to be presenting the topic that you've got tonight too, which is doing cross-platform mobile modern development in .NET 6. So take it away, Sam.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Lee. Yeah, hopefully you can see me, you can hear me fine. Please, speak up whenever you have any issues from my side. But thank you, Lee, and everybody else for having me here. It's a regular day evening, so I'm glad that you're spending hour or so with me. Let's have a little fun. Let's talk through some options that we developers have. And whenever you've had enough of me, I'll stop. But keep it interactive. Feel free to ask me any questions you might have along the way. Any concerns, any feedback, any good, bad, anything is welcome. So let's see if I can get my screen share going, which I probably should have tried, but shouldn't be so bad. All right, I'm going to move some screens over here, and I am keeping Teams on a different monitor here. My second monitor a lot of times is just it's an iPad. It's the Apple ecosystem, keeps things nice and quiet fan-wise. All right, let's see. Can I share? I can share. And I would like to just keep that window open. Okay, I think you folks can see my screen. Let me know if you cannot. All right, so let's talk cross-platform dev. No, not where I wanted to start. Let's start here. So I am hoping that most of you come from a .NET background. Maybe many of you do JavaScript as well. That is cool. Let's do full screen here, and I can still see all of you here on the right-hand side on Teams, so we should be good. All right, so this is the .NET user group, Cap Areas. Thanks for having me here. And let's talk about cross-platform dev with .NET 6, .NET 7, what's cooking, what's coming up at 6:43 p.m. Eastern time. I'll go maybe an hour or so. I actually do like, 4-hour, 8-hour workshops on this. So, I will keep it short, try to keep it short and sweet. And, please feel free to ask any questions as we go along. So like Lee said, I'm Sam. I'm an old man, been around for a while, doing developer advocacy. That right there is my social handle for pretty much anything. So, Skype, GitHub, Twitter, any of the things. If you need to get hold of me during this, after this, you know where to reach me. I work for Progress Software. Hopefully, maybe some of you know us for the things we do to make developers a little bit more successful. With developer tooling, with our things like Telerik or Kenda UI or Fiddler and Sitefinity and all the things. So we try our best, and in particular here, you'll see us doing a little bit with cross-platform dev as well. So let's start here, and first up, hopefully we are coming out of the pandemic mode slowly. So I hope you and yours are well, and you're well taken care of. I was just going to mention this before, but I live in a place called Fairview, which is kind of a suburb of Erie. Let's see, chat room. Okay, you folks are just talking about where you are at. Okay, yeah, so I'm in this little town called Erie, right across from the lake. It takes me about half an hour to get on a boat and get to Canada, but it'll take me like a 7-hour drive to get to Philly. It's a big state. We are kind of sandwiched in between Ohio and New York. All right, let's talk .NET. And again, even if you're not a .NET developer, hopefully some of this resonates because it is a level playing field. The barrier to entry is really little. And I would like to know maybe if some of you in the chat room, if you folks have done any of the stuff that we're talking about. Have you done any Xamarin development? Have you done any WPF? or any other Windows development? Have you done any ASP.NET or Blazor? Because all of it kind of mix and matches now very nicely, because we are sitting on a nice unified stack that is .NET. These are some Microsoft slides. So we are sitting on .NET 6. Which took them a while to kind of get to this point, because if you look at .NET and the history, we had .NET Framework, we had several iterations of .NET Core, and there were a few runtimes. There is we call them BCLs, base class libraries. So there was Mono, there was Unity, there was .NET. So now all of it has kind of been combined into a single runtime, which is a nice place to sit on, and .NET 7 is just going to keep on building on this. And the tools of our trade, for .NET developers, that's come a long way. It's not just Windows anymore. Obviously, it's cross-platform. You'll see me on VS for Mac. You'll see me on VS Code. It just works everywhere, which is really nice. So when we talk about cross-platform dev, I mean, sure, you can do things like with IoT or cloud, but I'm going to focus on maybe three of the most commonly used things, especially for enterprise dev. That's mobile, web, and desktop. So how have we been building apps for these platforms up until now? What's changing as we go along? So let's start with mobile. And this is my one. Oh, and by the way, I will keep slides to maybe like 10, 15 minutes at a minimum. I want to show you as many things as I can. There will be like high-risk demos that will fail left or right, but at least we'll have a little fun. I am on a Mac as my dev machine today, but I do have like Windows machines under my desk, but I'm running a VM, so I mean, it might catch fire, who knows? Because there's a lot of heat we generate when we are running things in a VM, but we'll have a little fun. So I want to keep some slides to a minimum. You can get all of this, and then let's talk through and see what the possibilities are. So if you're building for mobile, you have a lot of choice. If you want to build native apps, go for it. iOS, Android, Windows, but it's just expensive because it's three very different, application platforms and three different code bases towards maintaining a single thing. So hopefully you are trying to build cross-platform stuff. And if you are trying to go cross-platform, a lot of choices for you. If you are doing web stuff, keep on doing the web stuff. You have solid tooling, solid framework. Nothing is really stopping you. You can start with the mobile web, where your website starts, acting like a good citizen on mobile devices. You can start making it a PWA, which is a progressive web app, where it's a really good citizen. You can do push notifications. You can do, JavaScript-based service workers. You can do all of that from just a web app. And you got, a lot of frameworks that can help you out. A lot of SPA frameworks like, Angular, React, Vue, SPA, Bootstrap, you name it. But if you are rather, inclined to do the web stuff, then consider some of the other alternatives as well, because you can actually build native apps with web stuff now. And by web stuff, I mean JavaScript. So you can do NativeScript, you can do React Native. So, lots of options. If you would rather build higher level languages or apps with those languages, then you're looking at some cross-compiled story, because it needs to be compiled down into runnable assemblies on iOS, Android, and other devices. So Xamarin has been around, Uno, Flutter, they are all kind of in that same boat. And now we have .NET MAUI. So we'll see how that's evolving. So, that's my quick pitch. I'm sure there are other ways of doing mobile, but these are kind of the five that I can think of. So starting with the .NET stack and kind of where we started. This was 2011 or so, 2012. We had Mono, we had Xamarin, and this is kind of for the first time we started writing C# that was shared across different platforms. So we started writing some business logic that was shared in C#, but we wrote the heads, the iOS, Android and Windows heads separately. So this was a good first step, but it did need that you would have to learn how to write UI in iOS or Android. So, for .NET developers, it wasn't maybe as enticing. Then came Xamarin Forms, probably 2014, 2015 timeframe. And this was, started out as an experiment, but, very quickly, grew in popularity. And this is production ready right now. And I like saying, like, for Xamarin Forms, it's either people who absolutely love Xamarin Forms because it's a niche audience, or people who hate Xamarin Forms. There's, hard to find in-betweens, but the promise was there because we started writing some shared UI, which is, a difficult thing to do. It's an abstraction, it's a wrapper, and you're trying to cater to 3 very different platforms, but it was there, and it'll get you most of the way without having to know iOS or Android too much. But the purple and the green and the blue, they don't entirely go away, and that's for good reason. You want to be able to step in and do native stuff whenever you want it to. So that's our present reality. It has been around for 6-7 years. Probably the easiest way to take .NET to other platforms. But there are some pain points in this present story, and since the acquisition, the teams have been working with the .NET teams, with the Visual Studio teams. They are acutely aware of some of the pain points, and they're trying to do better. So that's where this comes in. This is .NET MAUI. So in a way, and MAUI, if you have not heard, I'm hoping some of you maybe have played around with .NET MAUI, but if you have not heard, it stands for Multi-Platform App UI. So the P is silent because Maui sounds better than MPAUI, right? So it's Maui, like the island in Hawaii. So this has been cooking for about 3 years now, engineering wise. So it's a big evolution of Xamarin Forms initially, because that Xamarin Forms very much was a mobile first approach. So we started with that mindset, but then it has kind of grown into the next generation of cross-platform .NET strategy, because now it includes desktop as well, in addition to mobile. So that really opens up, the funnel. So you have, a single shared code base, truly shared. You will talk about some resources that are shared. We'll talk about the single project system, and you're still building native apps, native UI, great performance. We are, borrowing some of the .NET generic host builder and just kind of bringing it consistency to the rest of the .NET ecosystem. So it's a great story. You can reach iOS and Android, that's given, but you can also reach Windows and Mac. And to reach desktop, .NET MAUI actually does not reinvent the wheel. It uses a couple of things that are already there. It uses WinUI 3 for Windows. It uses Mac Catalyst for Mac. Mac Catalyst, by the way, if you don't know, that's the Apple-approved way of taking your iPad apps and running them on the Mac desktop, because everybody wants to build for iOS. Not many people want to build for the Mac desktop store. So Apple wants you to have your iPad apps run on desktop. So that's kind of where .NET MAUI fits in. A lot of love has been poured in engineering-wise. And you still have the benefits of an easy way to get to platform-specific things. So it's truly native apps, and some of the architectural things inside have also evolved to make it easier. And then we are also kind of welcoming the web folks in a way. And this is nothing new. I mean, if you folks know anything about Electron, kind of the same idea, but done very, very differently. So we'll talk about it. And the ecosystem for .NET MAUI is growing. So early days, but still, hopefully, people can see the promise. And as we stand right now, .NET MAUI has been out production ready as a platform since May of 2022. And as of August of 2022, we had tooling kind of playing a little catch up because Visual Studio has to do their releases. So Visual Studio release on Windows is done. That's 2022 17.3. The Mac tooling is still in preview. Hopefully in the next couple of months, it should be out. So that's where we stand right now with .NET MAUI. Any questions, folks, feel free to chime in chat. Let's talk about desktop, okay? And I've said this a few times, but I'm an old man. I've been doing this for a long time. I have, started back in like Visual Fox Pro days. I've done a lot of WinForms. I've done WPF. I've done like 2 years of Silverlight for what it's worth. I need hugs once in a while. But let's talk about how we do desktop today, okay? A lot of choices, especially if you are targeting Windows. You have like the top 4 are just hardcore straight up Windows application stacks. And don't let people tell you that these things are dying, because they're not. Your enterprises run a lot of these same apps. Your businesses depend on it. So there's nothing wrong with WinForms or WPF. In fact, there are some tools like the .NET Upgrade Assistant that will help your WinForms or WPF apps. And think about what we're doing here. WinForms is like 20 years old. WPF is 15 years old. They can run, I mean, .NET Framework is where they started, but they can run on .NET 5, .NET 6, .NET 7, right? So very, very modern .NET stacks. They can run on all of it. And when you talk about modernization, also .NET 6 has what's called the LTS, the long-term support badge. So it's kind of making enterprises kind of sit up and consider some migration and modernization. And when you consider that, it's difficult ROI-wise to just kind of drop an app and kind of rebuild it, right? So you want to keep your business running. So what you may want to do is, bring in little bits of modernness in your WinForms, in your WPF app, if that's what you're doing. If you want to do web stuff, that's welcome to PWAs. In fact, a lot of the Microsoft Store apps are PWAs. And then Electron has been around for quite some time. Electron is a way of taking your web stuff, which is HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, bundling it up and making it available as a native app package on respective desktop platforms. And it's been around and it's battle tested. So a lot of the things we do every day, like Teams that we are on right now, your Slack, your maybe Teams is now a native app actually, but Slack and Figma and VS Code, those are all Electron apps. So it really works, but it might be an overkill for some situations, which is where .NET MAUI comes in. So you have a few other choices if you wanted to click different dialects of Xaml. You can do all of that. The last two are kind of enabled by .NET MAUI essentially. So we get to Windows through WinUI, and then we are kind of welcoming Blazor. We'll talk about Blazor a little bit more, but that's your modern web application framework. That's welcome to desktop and mobile apps as well, which is really nice. Similar story on Mac and Linux. For the three of you who want to run Linux as your desktop, good for you. But you can kind of reach Linux as well. This is kind of an untold story because even with Lee's laughing, even with Microsoft and their engineering, they have to hit the masses first, right? So Linux support for .NET MAUI is still kind of community driven. Eventually, it should be part of it, and we can already reach things like Tizen, which is an OS that Samsung makes. It probably runs your fridge or your TV. You've been able to run Xamarin Forms on those platforms. Now you can run .NET MAUI as well. Watch stuff is coming. So a lot of ways to reach Mac and Linux as well. So that's desktop. Now let's talk about web really quick. So you have a plethora of choices as to how you build your web apps, right? If you look at where we have been as .NET developers, it's ASP.NET. It's fast, it's modern, it's really cool, it's modular, and all the good things. It's open source and cross-platform. But you have to understand that ASP.NET fundamentally still is a server-side technology, right? And yes, you can do a lot of things, on the client side. You can do AJAX calls, you can do, signal or bridges across, but it is still, server side, and that has limitations for you to build modern client-side apps until you had Blazor come into the picture, because that really changes the game. But ASP.NET is great, and a lot of companies who have been traditional .NET shops, when you wanted to build a modern web app in the last 10 years, you kind of lean towards Angular or React or Vue, and you kind of relegated .NET or ASP.NET to be the backend or your APIs, right? So that is still a good shop, good option. But ASP.NET is here to stay. In fact, they're trying to make things a little easier. If you look at how we write APIs today on ASP.NET, it's web API, and we have the traditional like the CRUD operations that we support, like create, read, update, and delete. Those are all controllers and actions. It's a little bit of drama. You have to connect that to Entity Framework and SQL Server, and by the time you have like a Hello World app, it's like half a day gone. So they're trying to make this easier. For college kids coming out with a little Mac, you can now just write 3 lines of .NET code and you can stand up an API. So that's called minimal APIs. Make things a little bit easier for you to get into, and then you can keep building on to make it more advanced and stuff like that. So Blazor has been kind of a game changer, because prior to that we had no way of writing C# front and back, but now we do. So Blazor is a modern web application framework. I in fact hang on for a second. It's 7 p.m. So my lights kind of dimmed down because we have automation. So it thinks it's kind of time to tone things down for a second. So let me go into my office and make things a little brighter again. There you go. So Blazor, I remember like Steve Sanderson, who works on the ASP.NET team, brilliant engineer. The first time he showed off Blazor was, I think, NDC Oslo, and he just kind of blew everybody's mind because that was the first time we saw C# running on the browser. So Blazor, you don't have to run it on the browser. It will absolutely do server-side Blazor, which is where you have a shadow DOM on the client side, and you are still rendering most things on the server side, sending it over to the client side, and you're using Razor as a component engine, and it works great, especially for line of business apps. But then comes WebAssembly, which is kind of an assembly level language where your higher level languages like C, C++, and Rust, and F#, those can be compiled down into almost assembly-like code that your browser can execute at runtime. And it's native performance just like JavaScript does. So that kind of changes the game. So you are shipping .NET DLLs to the client side, but everything, the DOM and everything is in the client side. Hopefully you have validations on both sides, but C# front and back, so great story. So Blazor is particularly well suited for writing PWAs because again, it's meant for client-side apps. You can absolutely take Blazor, put it in an Electron shell, and run it on desktop. Nothing's stopping you. But again, it can be a little heavy-handed. The way .NET MAUI does things versus Electron is very, very different. It is both welcoming, web stuff to desktop, to mobile, but .NET MAUI takes the approach that, modern users have hopefully an evergreen browser, and hopefully if you're still having to, IE6, I think died like 6-7 months back, right? So hopefully you're not having to support that anymore. So hopefully you can trust the user to have a modern browser, and then every browser has a browser component that we can borrow and just render our, web stuff. Oh boy, Netscape in the house. I've talked about having like a cloud service called HAS, which is Hugs as a Service. It's door to door. We just go around and help people who have to support older technologies. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Now, this is the thing that Microsoft talks about a lot. It's called Blazor Hybrid. You can call it whatever you want, but essentially we are rendering web stuff in a giant web view. And that just makes your web stuff suddenly light up on mobile and desktop. But the benefit here is, I'll show you some Angular and React as well running with .NET MAUI, but the benefit here is Blazor and .NET MAUI are particularly good together because they both run on the exact same runtime. That's .NET 6 and .NET 7. So code sharing is just like that much easier, right? So this is obviously a great story, but this is the starting of welcoming Blazor big time. If you are an enterprise, though, and if you are considering, moving things forward, you're considering some migration and modernization, the hope is like the stuff here on the right-hand side can hopefully get you to some modernness if you're maintaining stuff that's on the left. So if you're doing WinForms or WPF, make them run on .NET 6 if you can, and then you can bring in some Blazor, you can bring in some MAUI. UWP, again, based on who you ask, it's doing great or it's been dead for a while. It's all good because now it's kind of evolved into WinUI 3, which is the latest UX stack for Windows. Xamarin, if you're doing any Xamarin or Xamarin Forms moving to .NET MAUI, that's pretty easy. There are tools that will help. I talked about the web APIs. If you have any sort of web APIs, you don't have to borrow any of the new stuff, but just make it run on .NET 6 if you can, because you'll get some performance benefits right out of the gate. And if you're doing any JavaScript, that's kind of welcome too. So Blazor and .NET MAUI really, open up the, framework a little bit and, welcome other folks into the fold. Just two quick slides here. We try to help, like I said, we make Telerik for all things, .NET, and we make Kendo UI, which is, JavaScript framework for all things JavaScript. Come as you are, Angular, React, Vue will let you render some sharp UI. And with that, I am done. No, I'm not done as in done. I'm done speaking in terms of slides. And which any of you, if any of you want, I mean these are up on SlideShare. Just search for my name. But let's look at some stuff. Yeah, this was coming up. The world does run on software, right? So that's all with the slides. Let's look at some stuff. And I hope you can still see me, can hear me, and let me know if you have any questions along the way. All right. So where do we start? Let's start with .NET MAUI. So if you have never actually played around with this is the way to start. You do a search, you likely end up on the docs. And this, by the way, is being, redone as we speak. Most of it is done now, but a lot of the, low-level documentation that we had for Xamarin Forms, that's been kind of moved over, and we have added stuff for desktop. We have added stuff for Blazor. I have, seen the .NET MAUI team from early days. Like I know that all of them, all of the guys pretty much, and gals, and they have really worked hard on this, and it's come a long way. So it's good to see the promise. So this is kind of where you start. You talk about supported platforms, and they talk about, hey, Android, iOS, Mac, Windows. It's all there. Notice how, oh, maybe they did take it off. Right now it says Tizen. They had Linux support in here, but that's been taken off. Eventually it will come back. So how to get started, be it on, Mac or Windows, you get started with whatever you need. So first thing is, if you do not have .NET 6, and this is the beauty of modern .NET, it is so easy to install and, throw it away. So this is, .NET 6. If you don't have it, install it. It will reside side by side with your .NET framework. Gone are the days where your IT has to have a whole process, to upgrade your .NET. It's just a folder. I have done things where I'm on stage, I will blow away .NET because now it's just a folder. I can bundle it with my apps. It's really nice. So get the SDK on Mac or Windows, and that's going to get you the runtimes. In terms of .NET MAUI, you can get started in a couple of different ways. Since I started super early, I have, experienced the pain, and things were painful, very painful, because it was all command line. And I still, I like my command line, but all the visual stuff is kind of built on top of it now. So Windows and Mac, they're all back. So get the bits, and that's going to get you what you're looking for. So let me start off here with console, just to kind of show you. Hopefully this is big enough and it's readable. Let me know if it's not. So if I do a .NET version, you'll notice that I'm running .NET 6. I did have .NET 7 as well. Preview 3, I think, is out, and they're coming up with fresh ones soon. But then if I do a .NET, I think, list of all the SDKs, you'll notice that I have stuff from 3.1, 5, and 6. So they're all just living right there in your local share folder. It's just a folder. So if I do a .NET new, show me a list of all the things, then you see a list of all these templates. Right now, this looks not so friendly, but this is pretty much the same as what you pull up in Visual Studio when you do a file new project. This is what you see. Now you may not see some of these things because they're like in preview, but all of your iOS and Android stuff, people ask if that's all gone away. No, it's just kind of baked into .NET. So all of it is right there. And you can do Mac apps, you can do Razor libraries, unit testing, MVC, all of the Blazor stuff, ASP.NET, that's all there. It's pretty nice. So we talked about the web API. If you do a web API, that's where you get the old school MVC project. But if you just do web, then you actually get a minimal project, which is really nice. So for you to start with .NET MAUI, you're looking for at least these 3 templates, right? If you don't see them, then you don't have the bits installed yet. So you can get the bits just for command line, or you can get the bits inside of Visual Studio. So and speaking of that, let's open up Visual Studio. And let's see. Yeah, let's open up this app actually, and then I'll show you what the file new experience looks like. I want to actually take you back a little bit with what the reality looked like before, and then I'll show you what .NET MAUI does. So if I do a file, and I will bump up the fonts in just a second, I'm just trying to show you the new project experience here. Let's see, file new project. Ooh, oh, there you go. It kind of came back. Okay, so if you see the multi-platform app UI, this is the stuff, the same exact templates, just now visual now. And you get iOS and Android. If you're not seeing this, then you don't have the right bits. So on Mac, you need Visual Studio 2022 17.4. That's the latest preview. On Windows, you have a release version of .NET MAUI. All right, so let's actually start with this one here. This is Xamarin Forms App, just to kind of show you where things were before. So when you start off with the Xamarin Forms App, you have one solution with several projects underneath, and this is kind of where the pain started with Xamarin Forms, because you're supporting iOS and Android and Windows and a whole bunch of other platforms. but everything is by itself. So here I don't have Android or Windows. I'm just running things on iOS. I'm just not a big Android person, but you start off with a .NET standard project, back in the days. Now it's just a .NET library. This one is shared in between or all of the platforms. Then you have the platform specific things, and every one of them have their own NuGet packages. Every one of them have their own dependencies and their assets, which is because all of the platforms are different. They all have different specifications and requirements for your app icon, your splash screen, your images, your resources, your fonts. Everything has to live on a per platform basis. So I've been part of a real world in the store type Xamarin Forms development, and it's just it gets complicated for bigger apps. Let's just say. But this is kind of where things started off, with Xamarin Forms. Let me bump up the fonts here a little bit. So we have app.xaml.cs kind of starts up here, and it says, hey, I can give you these hooks, when the app starts up, when it goes to sleep and goes to resume, and you point it to a main page, which is your first page. This is where we get to write something called XAML. Let me collapse this a little bit. Now, if you have never done XAML, it stands for Extensible Application Markup Language, and it is specifically catering to older folks like me, because we have seen this and done this many years now. But I get it. Not a lot of people like it. It gets a little verbose, but tools help out a little bit. It's not so difficult actually. It's just XML. If you've done any Android development, it's just an XML with some special tags. But this one lets you define all of your visual tree in XAML. You don't actually have to do this. You can define the whole visual tree in C# if you want. But this is the XAML that defines your visual tree, and everything is an abstraction. Your labels, your buttons here. Entry is what we call a text box. So everything is an abstraction. At runtime, you get a native iOS text box, native Android text box, and so on. So here's how things work. This is a regular text box. And then if I wanted to change that text box, I can write a custom entry. This one here is taking that entry thing and just saying, I want a green text box, because, why would you not want a green text box? And I'm just extending that, getting that. So if I go ahead and run this on iPhone 13, actually, let's do that. It's going to be a cold start on the iOS simulator. And a question that we get a lot is Xamarin Forms and .NET MAUI, do you need a Mac to build for iOS? And the answer is yes and no. It's a yes, because it's a native app package. No one can get around that. So you have to go talk to Xcode to do the build and come back with an app package. This has to be compiled down into native app binaries. But you don't have to have a physical Mac. You can have a Mac in the cloud. As long as there's an Xcode that you can go talk to, you're fine. But I'm already on a Mac, so it knows, Visual Studio knows to go talk to Xcode. So this is the hello world experience almost. You get Xamarin Forms, and you get a regular text box, and you get a green text box, because we just changed that, right? So we can render that green text box now that we have an abstraction over that. Now, this is fine, but what if you wanted to do it just for a specific platform? Maybe you're okay with the white text box on every other platform, but just for iOS, you wanted something different, right? So now you're kind of getting into native app territory. So let us, uncomment this little bit of code here, and let's go ahead and run this, and I'll show you what it's trying to do here. So what we're doing here is we are writing something called a custom renderer. Behind every piece of, abstraction, there sits a piece of code called the renderer that knows how to render a native button or an entry or a list view or a grid, right? And this one here tries to customize that renderer on a per platform basis. So here, I think this one's RGB. It looks like it's a pink, or a purple text box. So I have done that just for iOS, not for Android, not for anything else. So this is kind of how we go down to the platform level right now. But this, gets to be a little clunky. And this is super simple. In fact, you don't even need a custom renderer to do this. You can get away with things like effects and behaviors. But if you're writing, really complex controls and you want to customize that, you don't want the iOS or Android specific things. You're writing the next Facebook or, PayPal or whatever. You want the same consistent UX all across. This is kind of what you'll do. And it gets a little tedious because it's just a lot of, boilerplate code that you're writing. And this little line of code here, this is not very fun because what it's trying to do is an assembly swap at runtime, because it's trying to swap over that entry renderer with your custom assembly at runtime. So that takes a performance hit. But this is kind of how we have always done things in Xamarin Forms, and it's fine. If you already have investments in this, you can actually just bring it over. But this is kind of where Xamarin Forms stands. So compare this now to where .NET MAUI comes in, right? So let's close this. Let's go to .NET MAUI here actually. Let's see. I want to. Let's go to this folder where I keep my stuff here, and let's do a MAUI hello, right? So if I go in here, I'm going to open this up in VS Code because I have that as an environment variable, so I can just do dot. So this is the same app now in .NET MAUI, and you'll notice the differences here. Steve in the chat room is Apple just sent out a message about the new Xcode. Yes, that will give you registered 25 devs online compute time. Look at that. Nice. Yeah, thank you, Steve. 25 hours of online compute. That's not bad at all. Yeah, very nice. Good to know. And there have been others who have tried solving this problem. There's macinthecloud.com. At some point, Visual Studio had a thing called App Center. I mean, it's still there. They're working on bringing it over to .NET MAUI. That had like a Xcode, hours built into as well. But this is kind of what you get with, .NET MAUI. So now, out of the box, you'll notice that things are a little bit more simpler. You have a single solution that has all of the platforms, right? So right in here are your platforms: Android, iOS, Mac, Tizen, Windows. If you wanted to do platform-specific things, that's where you'll do it. But hopefully, you can stay away doing it too much, right? So if you wanted to get down to the platform-specific stuff, that's where you do it. But take a look at the resources here. Your app icons, your fonts, your images, your splash screens, those are all now shared. Which is a gigantic task because they have to cater to different platform specifications all over. But they're going to try. It's not a silver bullet that's going to solve all of your problems, but it's a start. Let me make things a little bit bigger. And in here is the styles Xaml. Like they dropped a whole design guide right in here. For every piece of UI, there's like a style that you can, and you obviously want to clean this up if you're running this on a real app. But things start out much more friendlier. Resources are shared. It's truly a single project, and then this is kind of where it's wired up. CS Proj is much more simpler. It's a multi-targeted SDK style project. So you mention the targets that you're running right there, and you start it up, and your items that are shared, your resources, your app icons, they're all kind of mentioned right here. And then Maui program.cs is also where things start out. Xamarin Forms was always a different kid on the block, didn't quite adhere to all of the .NETs. Now they are kind of borrowing the .NET generic host builder. This is exactly how, like a Blazor app will start up, right? That's the host builder, and you register all of your services. So dependency injection is kind of baked in, which is really nice. You do take a little bit of performance hit, but the benefits of dependency injection and the services, be it singleton or transient scope, that far outweighs the little cost that you're paying performance-wise. So everything is pretty much the same. Beyond that, you point things to the main page. Here we're using a shell, which is kind of a navigation thing that's kind of built in now. You're not forced into using it. And then you come down to main page.xaml. This is again the same XAML. But here things are, it's the same, but it's just, faster to boot up, goes cross-platform to, iOS and Android and so on. So I can take this, same app, and I can, let me show you a build of this. Let's do, let's see if this will remember. Let's do an iOS build, right? So if I do a .NET build, I can specify I want to run this only on that target framework, that being iOS. You'll see that it's coming up with a bundle and an app ID, and it's trying to go to the build. Optimizing assemblies means it's done the build. It's trying to build up that assembly for you, and eventually it's going to launch on whichever is iOS simulator that you have. Most times it ends up being the iPad Air. You can change where you run your apps, obviously. So eventually, there you go. So iPad Air comes up with .NET, and that's just the .NET MAUI Hello World experience. It's just a click, and it's got the .NET bot in here, and everything works, right? So this is the .NET MAUI Hello World experience, and I can take the same app here without changing any line of code. I can run this on, let's see, does it remember? Mac Catalyst, there you go. So I can take the same app and I can just change up the runtime and say, give me a desktop app now. And it's going to compile and give me a Mac desktop application running through Mac Catalyst. There you go. So now you get a Mac desktop application. It can do all of the desktopy things, which we'll look at in a second. But now it's a Mac desktop application. You get the same experience on Windows. And here's where I'll have to see how long it takes. This is a VM here. And it's not running Windows 11 yet. This is still on Windows 10. Steve is saying Maui team will integrate that soon. Yeah, we'll see. We will see. So I am on Windows here, Visual Studio 2022 17.3. And let me show you the Maui Hello solution here. So essentially, you get the same experience on Windows, but here you get a few more things, especially if you're doing Xaml. Because they are very concerned about the developer inner loop. We want things to be very fast when we are changing code, and we want to see that right away on the app that's running. So there are things like hot reload and hot restart. Everything is hot. So there is XAML hot reload. There is .NET hot reload. So you can actually change your C# while your app is running. And you can see a live preview of your app before it launches, and then you can have a live visual tree where you can look at any piece of UI, kind of like DevTools for your browser. You can point and click, and it'll take you to the exact XAML that's rendering that part of the visual tree. So tooling has really come a long way. So we'll give Visual Studio here a second to launch. And actually it does come back. So this is the same .NET MAUI now running on a Windows machine. So let me go fire this up. Same exact app, right? So it's the same one that we saw on Mac with running it on iOS and Mac Catalyst. Now you can run the same thing on Windows. So it's building. And while it's doing that, I do want to show you how the customization thing has changed a little bit in .NET MAUI. Let's go back to our terminal. We'll open up a different project while that one is building. Let's do Maui customization. Just going to show you how the rendering thing has now changed. Are we back? This one is still building. All right, we'll let it build. All right, now let's take a look at this here. The same kind of approach that we took with Xamarin Forms now it's changed a little bit. This is a .NET MAUI app now. So in here in my main page, I'm still trying to use an entry, but I want to customize that entry a little bit. So that has kind of changed as compared to a renderer, which used to be very much, now it's trying to use my Apple ID because it's running on Windows. It's saying, hey, okay, hold on. I think the Windows side has come up now. So let's do that first. Or maybe, no, where's my app? All right. It's still busy building. Okay, all right. So compared to .NET or compared to Xamarin Forms, now we have a thing called handlers, right? And handlers kind of change up the architecture a little bit. So if I go down here, user interface, graphics, trying to show you a picture here of where things are different. Overview, maybe. So you have the same things that you did with Xamarin Forms. You have pages that are made up of the different app pages. You have layouts. You have views. Those are the child controls that you put in your visual tree. But what has changed is I'm not finding that image right away. But fundamentals maybe they have changed how they render stuff, which is really nice. It's somewhere in here. I'm trying to show you a picture where they have the handlers. It's now a little bit more abstracted, so it's not tied as closely to Xamarin Forms. So you can use the same handlers, which is the rendering thing, from pure C#. If you don't like MVVM, which is a design pattern we use for XAML and C#, you can do MVU. You can do all of it from Blazor as well. So that really kind of opens up how things are rendered. Yeah, so let's go back to Windows here for a second, because I think this thing finally came up. So that's my .NET MAUI app running on Windows, same exact app, right? But since you're on Windows, you get a few additional tools, like your Xaml previewers are here, live visual trees here, and it just works, really well. If you're on Windows, we can change up things here. Instead of hello world, we can say hello, cap area, right? And I don't even actually have to save it. It just, does this thing of it, a comparison of your visual tree, and notices that I've changed some XAML, pushes it out. And it's not just the XAML part of it. So when you click on this button here, essentially what it does is just a click event handler. It just counts how many times you're clicking, right? So now let's go ahead and change some C#. So here's the click event handler. It's just doing a count ++, right? So we can change this up. Where's my cursor? There you go. To count, let's say +10, right? So I have to save this, right? And then I have to hit this little fire icon, because it's hot reload, right? Now we're doing .NET hot reload. So we fire this up, your app is still running. And now when we click on this, it's incrementing by 10, right? So compare this to how JavaScript does things. This is really difficult to pull off, because it's a native thing. They're having to compare that, oh, you changed this class, so we have to just push out that component into the app and refresh that. Well, this is .NET hot reload. This is XAML hot reload. So I will actually run my apps, keep it on an iPad and just run this all day. So it's fairly productive. It does have the edges that it falls off. So if you're using things like dependency injection, you change up the service, it's not going to be able to keep up. But for the most part, it really tries to. So that's there's some of the Windows tooling that's now baked into Visual Studio. Let's go back to what we were talking about here, to this entry field here. This is the customization thing. Oh, Lee says cool. Yeah. So let's see how we can customize things now. We have app XAML. This is kind of where the app begins. Directly in my app XAML. So I'm not writing specific iOS things. I'm writing it, per platform or every level. We can just say precondition if iOS or if Android, do this. And this is not the only way. You can actually do it in different files as well, but this is kind of the easiest way. So right out of the gate, I can step directly into UIKit, which is Apple's UI framework, to say, give me that green text box that I'm looking for, right? So if I can run this now, it just becomes so much easier to actually get down to the platform level and run this. Let's run this on iOS. And we'll see the same app. And for those of you who do Blazor and you want to see the web stuff, I'm getting there. Give me like 5 more minutes and we'll switch to the web stuff. So .NET MAUI running on that iPad Air, and I should have my green text box. It's just done differently. So there's my green text box, right? Now, one question that we get is, what if you are migrating from Xamarin Forms to .NET MAUI? What happens then? So there are things like .NET upgrade assistance that can actually help you out. This is kind of what I use if you have to, hold on, not that. I wanted to show you this maybe. So this one here is a command line tool that'll take your WinForms, WPF, ASP.NET, and make it run on .NET 5, .NET 6, .NET 7. And in there right now, you can see Xamarin Forms to MAUI. So this is in the works. It doesn't do all of the things that they wanted to do yet, but it's a start. And maybe it's not going to do everything for you. You have to map some namespaces out, but it gets you there. Gets you a single project, gets you the SDK style project. So it's a start. And then what if you actually did some Xamarin Forms back in the days and you wrote up exactly what I had? Those are called custom renderers. And I know enterprises have written up, big custom renderers back in the days. And now you're ready to move to MAUI, but you're wondering what happens to those? Like, do I have to throw them away? The answer is no, because you don't have to. In your MAUI program.cs, all you have to do is make sure you're using MAUI compatibility. So they give you a compatibility shim, so you can come back and do the old school things here. So I'm doing this just for iOS, okay? For Android, for everything else, I'm fine. But if you happen to run on iOS, I happen to have a custom renderer. In this case, it's nothing really custom. It's just the entry renderer. But this is actually coming directly from Xamarin Forms days, right? So I have a custom entry renderer from Xamarin Forms, and I just want to run this on iOS. So now this actually trumps what we did with, main page dot or in the app xaml.cs, because this one said, give me a green text box, but then the actual page or before the program starts up, we are saying, no, replace it with this renderer. So when we run that thing back now, it should run the Xamarin Forms renderer and give us back, the regular white text box instead of the green one. So if you have done anything with Xamarin Forms, just the only reason I'm showing you here is it's very welcome in .NET MAUI. You can take your time, move it over. In terms of timelines, let's talk about that roadmap. Xamarin Forms last major release was 5.0. That was last November of 2021. You will have about 2.5 years of support, and they will, it's going to keep getting security fixes and little investments here and there, but nothing out of the world type thing. So here's the white text box. But you have until May 2024 to move things over to .NET MAUI, because this is clearly the way forward. .NET MAUI from this point onwards will kind of align itself with .NET. So every November, when we get a .NET version, major version, you'll have a .NET MAUI version. So we're looking at .NET 7 in November, you'll get .NET MAUI in November, and then every year .NET 8 and 9. So that's how it's going to keep going. So you have some time to move things over, but Xamarin Forms to MAUI, that's not very difficult at all. All right. What else? I can show you a lot more things with MAUI, but I do want to get to some Blazor stuff as well. So let's close this. Maybe one more thing with MAUI before we go off to Blazor land, because this is kind of bringing things back to desktop here a little bit. So let me show you. I think I had called it MAUI desktop. And again, if I'm boring you, let me know. I will switch gears and we'll talk about something else. But this one here is what can MAUI do on desktop really is what the question is. And let's see, can we make this? Oh, too small. Okay. So this one here is using a few things here that are desktop specific. For some reason, the Teams doesn't let me scroll over, or no, VS Code doesn't let me scroll over and cancel that out. But here's the .NET MAUI app, but it's kind of catering to desktop here, and they've done a few things to cater to desktop. First thing is let's actually not use the tab bar. I'm sorry. Let's start with what's called a flyout, because these are more desktop friendlier things. We'll look at a menu bar as well. Actually, I did want this to be turned on. I'm sorry. Let's start with flyout, which is what I had anyways. So this is my app shell, which gives me a little bit of navigation. I can have like a flyout menu. I can also do menus if I'm on desktop. So this is where I'm setting up like a flyout menu. Here's my main page, and I can do a menu bar. And now this is not going to work on iOS or Android. This is especially meant for Windows and Mac. So I can have menu bar items that kind of go on the top. So that's kind of catering to desktop very much. What else? Oh, and I can spin up multiple windows. So when I click on that button, now it's going to spin up a new window with that same exact page, right? So let's go ahead and run this really quick, and we're going to run this on Mac just to get a feel of the desktop things that it does. So it's going to spin up same exact .NET MAUI app like the hello world, but it's going to have a menu on top, and it's going to have a little flyout. So in case you want to have navigation that way, you have multiple choices. So this is my MAUI app, right? Now you'll notice that down here at the bottom, I have this app running as an icon, but I can go up here. The file, the edit format, those are all the Mac specific or Windows specific things. But then this locations thing, that's mine, because that's my menu bar. So this is your way of doing navigation. This can actually be data bound, so you can make this dynamic for users. Like I know enterprises who have always had like Wpf apps, and these are heavy duty apps which spin up multiple windows, and people people run them all day long. So you need multiple window support, and that's what it's doing. And you can actually dynamically load these menus. So it's really nice. So when I click on this button here, it launches a new window, right? But this one's a whole other instance of that window. And then, this one has been clicked one time. This one has not been clicked, right? So you can, keep on clicking this, and it's going to spin up newer versions of that same window, all with different lifestyles. And this is your little flyout menu, which you can totally customize with header, footer, whatever you need. So maybe it's a good, UX on, bigger iPads or, tablets, maybe not so much on desktop. In fact, I mean, I'm not going to run this again, but just to kind of show you the code here, if I go back here and turn off that flyout, I can do a tab bar where now the same menu shows up at the bottom, because you're running on iOS or Android. So you can really customize the look and feel of it. And that multiple window support that I showed you, that requires a little bit of, the Apple specific things, like we have to declare that, hey, we are doing something that's, multiple windows, because on an iPad, you'll have that, dual screen mode. So it'll do all of that. You just need to declare that on iOS and Mac to do so. So desktop, if you're doing stuff with .NET MAUI, it is very, very welcome. All right, let's look at Blazor now. For those of you who do Blazor, let's see how we can bring some web stuff into mobile desktop. And let's look at my time. It's 7:36. Let's see how long I have before Lee kicks me off. Let's start at 8. How about that? So we'll stop at 8, and we can have conversations after that. Okay. Let us start with. Let's do Maui Blazor. Why not? All right, and we're going to open this up. Now, this will look really different from, well, actually not that different from .NET MAUI, but some things are different. So if you look at Maui program, nothing's different here. This is kind of how our app is starting up. It's a .NET MAUI app. We still have those platforms like the iOS, Android, those are still there, but it doesn't actually have much XAML or C# for that matter. Because what this Maui program CS is doing, it's bringing in this little one-liner service dependency called Blazerwebview. What's a web view? It's an abstraction that gives you a modern web view for whichever platform that you're on. So if you're on iOS or Mac, you're going to get the Safari WK web view thing. If you're on Windows or Android, you're going to get the Chrome web view. So it's borrowing the web view for whichever Blazor or whichever browser that you have installed. So that's what we're doing. Beyond that, if you look at main-page.xaml, for those of you who hate XAML, like this is all the XAML you ever have to see. You never have to write any more XAML at all, because this is just giving you like a content page, and then it says Blazor Web View, and it just takes up the whole UI. So the entire visual tree is Blazor, right? And within that, what we're doing is trying to find a Blazor component to start off with that happens to be main.razor, which is right here. And then we have these folders, www.root, pages, and shared. So if you look at my pages directory here, this is all Razor views. This is for those of you who do Blazor for web. All of that is now welcome inside of .NET MAUI. So this is my index.razor with the hello world and the page directive. This is all Blazor stuff meant for the web. Now it just works on native, which is really nice. Your shared stuff, your layouts, all of that lives right here, your shared CSS. And then you have www.root and then index.html. This is the div tag within which your entire Blazor app is loaded up, and you have web view dependencies and so on. So this kind of completely changes the game to a Blazor driven app as compared to a XAML and C# driven app. Actually, I can close out a couple of things here that I don't need. Let's run that thing again. Let's run this on Mac. And yeah, let me know, folks, if you have any questions or if it's the first time you're seeing things. It's kind of interesting to mix and match web stuff so deeply with native stuff, but you can. So if you have done any Blazor, this looks familiar right away because it's the Blazor Hello World template, right? So all of it just kind of works. And everything in here, the entire UI, pixel to pixel, is all Blazor because we didn't have anything else. You can actually mix and match native stuff with web stuff, but your counter components, your fetch data, everything just works. Now, just to kind of show you that this is real, Let's actually have all of you do this with me if you want on your machines. I have a little chat room set up. It's just a hello world type thing. It just does a relay command. So this one's just a real-time chat application. We're going to try to connect to it. So let's see if it'll hold up. It's a tiny Azure app service, so it doesn't have much juice to it. But that's the app I'm using. So we can say web says hello. And I can do a send. It's using SignalR as the real-time technology, so I can just keep clicking it. It's just real-time, and I can show this on multiple browsers. But that's my browser app. But I can actually run this same app now from Blazor, right? So hey, Jerry. Oh, and by the way, this has no authentication. It has no filters on it. So please keep it clean. I was doing this at a conference and somebody tried doing like SQL injection. I was like, there is no SQL server. It just relays whatever you give it. But anyways, no OAuth. Yes, OAuth can be a little painful. But here's Blazor saying hello from a desktop application, and it says hello right there, right? So code sharing is really awesome with .NET MAUI and Blazor, because now this little piece of component, I can write that as a C# library, and I can share this with my Wpf app or my WinForms app or my Blazor app or my MAUI app, right? Here, like this UI is done with HTML and C# and XAML, but you don't have to. You can also do this in with HTML. Or well, this one's done with HTML because it's Blazor, but I can also do it with C# and XAML, right? So that's just Blazor running inside of .NET MAUI really quick. So what else? Now let me talk about what exactly we did here. So turns out, where's my main page.xaml? This one here is the thing that holds it all together. That's the Blazerwebview. It's rendering all of your Blazor stuff inside, right? Now, the Blazerwebview is a kind of a misnomer because it actually has nothing to do with Blazor. I mean, it's Microsoft. They want you to, write Blazor, and of course, Blazor and Maui's sharing story is the best story. But it actually doesn't care what you give it. It'll render any HTML, any CSS, and JavaScript you want it. So that really makes things, super easy. We'll look at the same app now. Let's do stuff on Windows. Close that. No, I don't need you to save that because it's trying to save that hot reload stuff we did. Let's do this Blazor chat here. And this one's the same, Maui app, but this one is running on Windows, right? Let's go ahead and run this really quick. Where can I run it? There we go. Run that. And this one actually does a couple more, things that are different. Here you have the Maui app, but this one is actually trying to mix and match a little bit. So here you'll notice that I do have a hello world and I have a button here. Those are actually native buttons. So that's going to be native on Windows, native on iOS or Android, wherever you're running it. And the good thing here is I'm mixing and matching Blazor UI with some native UI, and they can coexist. And when I increment that, obviously that counter goes up, but that counter is actually a Blazor component. So we are letting a Blazor component drive a native piece of UI, which is really nice. And all that it's doing here is if I look at my main.razor, you'll notice that this is all some XAML. This is all native stuff here. And again, you don't need to write this. I'm just trying to show you this here. So that stack layout, that label, that button, those are native buttons. Those are abstractions that .NET MAUI will provide. But then you have the Blazorwebview that comes in and says, oh, let's just go render the whole Blazor app next to it. Now, in the index.razor page, I have borrowed a couple of lines of code from a good friend of mine, works on the .NET team, really smart. And this is the most hilarious 4 lines of code because I cannot help but show this off and how funny this is. So from my Blazor code, this is a Razor index file, right? I can bring in system.io and I can click on a button. Notice how this one says do something native, right? So when I click on that button, it's going to call into this event handler, and I have an H3 here with this message. It's going to try to create a new file, give it a name, open up system diagnostics process start notepad, right? So we're going to write something to it, and then we're going to try to read the stream. We're going to close it, and then we're going to read that file and stick it as a message in my H3, which is a web H3 component, right? So this works, and it's just kind of amazing because it's how funny this is. Enter something, right? So we can say hi, hi everyone, right? And I save that and I close it. and it's back as an H3 tag in my Blazor view. So what you see here is in just those 4 lines of code, it's Blazor running on .NET MAUI, but I can go out of process. I'm not stuck to my web sandbox because I am running on a desktop application. I can do more desktopy things. So I went off process, went to Notepad, read that file, came back in. So that really makes things open up. So you can do very native things with Blazor. And speaking of that, let's show you a couple more things here actually. Let's see, my phone's buzzing. No, that's my watch. Okay, so let's go to Maui native Blazor. All right, and here we're going to try doing some native things with Blazor, but now we can do things on iOS, right? Because it's one thing to say Blazor is welcome, but what kind of things can we really do with Blazor running on native desktop or mobile? So you saw the desktop stuff. Now let's do some mobile stuff. So let's go fire up a .NET build. Now we are going to try doing iOS. If I can find it, there we go. I have a cheat sheet of all my commands, so I don't forget. And again, don't be like me. Do this in Visual Studio. It's just so much easier. I just find the quick changing of projects being quicker a little bit on command line. All right, so we will have Blazor come up. This is the .NET MAUI with Blazor project coming up on my iPad Air. And we're going to try doing some native things. So first up, same exact template. I have a button here that says show native info. When I click on that, it says, hey, you are running, this is my app name. You're running this on portrait mode. That's my resolution, and that's my device name. And I happen to be on Wi-Fi because you're on a mobile device. You can be in 4G, 6G, 5G, 6G, and all the Gs, right? So you want to read where the user is at. So how do we do that? Turns out you don't have to do anything because in Xamarin Forms, we had a thing called Xamarin Essentials, which was an abstraction that gave you like 40 or so device-specific APIs, all from C#. And that had been brought over to .NET MAUI as Maui Essentials. And we used to do things like using Microsoft Maui Essentials. This has become like so essential that it's just not there anymore because it's just baked in. You don't have to bring in any namespaces. It's just all there for you automatically. So here's a Blazor view, and I can go directly into the app info. Give me the name of the app, give me the device display and the orientation, give me the device display, the width and the height of what I'm looking at. Here's me going into connectivity and trying to make sure that you're on Wi-Fi before I maybe do some Wi-Fi specific things. So very native things with Blazor. Now, let's go here into let's do the counter here. So I've added a few things here. When I say pick a picture, I can launch the camera, but similar to doesn't have a camera. So I'm essentially doing a media picker going into your photo library on iOS or Android, and I can choose a picture, and I can bring it right back. Now this, keep in mind, this is a Blazerwebview, so that's a web interface that brought it back. And I can write something to storage, and I can read from storage, right? So let's try doing a read from storage. And it's saying, hey, the last time we ran this app, it was like 11th of. Wait, is that my mic? No, somebody else's. All right. So that was the last time I read or ran that app, and I can write to storage. Now it's going to say, hey, it's 8:30. That's the timestamp, and I can go back home. I can bring back the counter, and I can read. Now it says, hey, that's my last used timestamp, right? So very native things that we are pulling off from Blazor. Let's take a look at how this works. Let's go to counter.razor. So if I go in here, you'll notice that writing that timestamp, that's just a preference. So there's a little key value pair that's an in-memory pair that you can write anything to it. You can serialize things, you can deserialize it back and bring it back. So that's super easy. For me to do a media picker, so you can go into your app library and read an image. That's just a media picker, pick photo. Once it comes back, take a look at this one here. This is the image that I was showing us the image that we chose, but that's a HTML image tag. We are using Blazor here because that image URL is now pointing to the full path because that image resides deep inside the simulator, and we are able to bring it back and show it to you in HTML. So that's pretty nice. And then I think the weather here, I'm not sure. oh, I've actually already run this app, so it won't do it again. But you can see like the device location here for the weather. It's fake data, but I can actually read the device, geolocation like the lat long. Since I've already run this app, it didn't show you, but it'll give you the warning that says, hey, this app is trying to read your location and so on. So you know what's going on. And for that, you need special things like info plist. You need to declare that, hey, I'm about to use or read your location. Don't say that you're going to stop somebody. But once you have that, it's super simple. Now you can just say in fetch data, you can just say, give me the last known location, and up and running you go with reading geolocation. So you can do some very, very native things with Blazor. All right. 10 minutes left, right? I said eight will stop. Okay. Let's show you a couple of things here. Let's show you this project here. So it's one thing to say that Blazor is kind of welcome in .NET MAUI, but who is this one for? It's essentially for people who have already been using Blazor, right? So you already have a web app with Blazor, but to build that whole web app again inside of .NET MAUI doesn't make sense. You'd ideally want to have Blazor that's serving up your web stuff, but then you want the same UI serving it up on mobile or desktop. So how do you do that? There isn't a one Visual Studio template that'll do it for you, but there is nothing stopping you. This one here, I have a solution here called Blazor Everywhere, and I've added a few things to it. This Blazor for web, the client, the server, and the shared, that's my Blazor WebAssembly project. So envision that you already have a project, you're just moving it into a different solution. And then I have added the .NET MAUI project to it. And what I've done here is, moved some things around. So if I look into the Blazor client-side project, you notice that I don't have my pages. I don't have my shared directories, right? Because I don't want to repeat that for MAUI or for native and Blazor. Same with the .NET MAUI project. It is a Blazor MAUI project, but it doesn't have the pages and the resources or the shared stuff, because that is what I want to keep in a separate folder or a separate project in this case. And my pages and my indexed and my counter, they all live right here. And my shared resources, my layouts, they all live right here, right? So what that lets you do is really share code nicely between web and native. Yeah, William, if you don't mind just going on mute, please. So let's take a look at this. So for the web stuff, all I have to do is, for my web stuff here, I can show you the dependencies here. Actually, let's go down here. Let's look at the dependencies. It is depending on that project. You see that shared UI, that's actually a dependency on the project itself. So I can keep all my Blazor stuff in a shared project and not have it shared. And all I have to do in my Blazor project is bring some things in, and right where we are wiring it up, I can just, instead of giving it the main layout right away, so the Blazor app starts out, I'm getting it from that shared library. So my Blazor app knows all the things to run. So let's run the Blazor project here, and this will be for your web app as you have been building your web app. So we'll give it a second. I think it's running. Okay. It built, but oh, it is kind of running, but never popped up my browser, which is funny. But let's go to localhost 5000. So that's my Blazor app, right? Again, nothing different about it, but you'll notice that it's saying, hey, I'm running this on browser because now it's shared code. Now it says Blazor Everywhere. And I get the window dimensions right here, which is a difficult thing for Blazor to get because you have to go talk to JavaScript. But because this is shared, I can now pull off some additional things. So let's go in here into our shared repo, and let's change up some things here. This was hello world, right? Let's change this to hello everyone, right? And we're going to go into my www root here, which should be somewhere here. And I have some CSS that is shared. There's an app level CSS, app.css, right? You see all of the CSS is right here for your Blazor app, and that's probably my button primary color. So we're going to comment that out, and we're going to make that background color of whatever you want, red, right? That's it. So now I made that change in a shared project though. So now my Blazor project and my .NET MAUI project should pick it right up. So let's change that to the MAUI project being the startup. And let's go to start without debugging. So essentially what I'm trying to say is if you have Blazor right now, you can actually bring it over nicely and share a lot of code between your web stuff and your native stuff and your CSS, your Razor components, your Blazor components, they can all be shared very nicely. Right. Anyone in the chat room, if anyone does JavaScript, can I see a raise of hands, please? Anyone does JavaScript in any capacity, jQuery, Angular, React, Vue, anything? Okay, Martin. I'm seeing a few hands. Okay, all right. So while this is building, it's Tuesday for Visual Studio as well. Let's look at some other stuff. You mean TypeScript? Yes, TypeScript is good too, because that's essentially Angular. Let's show you something else. So we are going to go, oops, not that. Oh, this thing popped up. Okay, hold on for a second, because before we go to the other one, I want to show you, this is the Blazor native app. This one's giving you different dimensions and saying, hey, I'm running on Mac Catalyst, by the way. And if I look at the counter, now instead of blue, it's red, because now it's a shared style. And if I pull up the Blazor app, it'll be reflected there as well. So, really nice strategy for sharing code in between, web and your native stuff. So I have 5 minutes before Lee and others kick me out. So let me show you a few more things here, if I can. So what are the names? Let's go to Maui Angular, right? You can kind of guess where I'm going with this, but let's open this up. So let's say you have done Angular for the last, 7, 8 years, and that's where your investments are. Now you see Blazor suddenly being welcome on .NET MAUI, and you're asking, well, what about Angular? What happens to all my JavaScript or TypeScript stuff? Well, it kind of can play along nicely. So here is a .NET MAUI with Blazor project, okay? Nothing different about it. You can see the same Maui program.cs. Everything is the same except for that main page.xaml. Here we are launching a Blazerwebview, as one does for all of your Blazor stuff, but I've commented out the 2 lines of code that lets it find the first Blazor component, because I actually don't want it to find a Blazor component. In my www root, this is the index HTML that you get with Blazor, right? Not that guy, this one, right? I actually don't want it to use that. I want it to use a different index HTML, which is sitting here. So where is this coming from? So it turns out I have an Angular CLI project. So let's go here. I'm going to zoom in just a second. So Angular CLI, right? So envision, ng new, you have an Angular app, right? So, and again, there might be other ways in we are spinning up your Angular app. The point is, if you do an ng build, you essentially get a distribution directory. This is all the stuff that's now ready for my deployment. So that's flattened out. I have my main, I have my polyfill, I have my runtime, my CSS, everything is flattened out. I can put this on Azure, I can put this on Amazon, or wherever I want. So it's a pre-compiled, flattened Angular app. So I can take all of that, right? And I can just drop it here in my www root folder in my .NET MAUI app. So you can see all of the Angular stuff is right here. And that index.html is the Angular project. So with that, I can do a Mac build, maybe. Yeah, let's do a Mac build. I find Mac builds to be just a teeny bit quicker than iOS builds. Yeah, we'll give it a second. Okay, there you go. So this is Angular, exactly the same CLI Hello World app. Now it's running inside of a shell. Now, this is nothing new. You have been able to do this with Electron all day long. What is different here is there is no Node.js and there is no Chromium. So things are not so heavy-handed. It is literally a tiny web view that is rendering all of this. Question here from the chat room. Rob is asking, is Blazor everywhere solution available for us to clone? Yes. If you go out to my GitHub repo, do a search, and you should find that. I mean, there's nothing to it. It's just, Blazor and .NET MAUI just, slammed together into a single project. So that's, Angular running inside of .NET MAUI. Now, since we are here, I'm not going to open up the projects, but I'm going to show you a couple of things really quickly. So let's do MAUI Angular. Since we talked about Blazor components, let's talk about Angular components as well. So same exact app, but I have, a custom component that I've built in .NET or in Angular. In this case, it's nothing custom. It's actually a Kendo UI component because we do JavaScript UI. So you're going to see a similar app, but this is, again, Angular, but that that barcode, that's a Kendo UI barcode. So I'm just trying to say that any components that you have built with Angular, it will render just fine because it's just a web canvas. It's a web view. It'll render anything. And since we did talk about Angular, it'll be unfair if we don't talk about the other thing, which is Maui with React, right? And again, I'm just going to, for the sake of time, I'm just going to launch it. But you understand where I'm going with this. I can do an npx, I think, create React app, and then I can, build the React app, and then I can just drop those, things inside of my .NET MAUI app, and it'll just start working because it's a web view, and the web view doesn't care. That's your, hello world React app running inside of .NET MAUI. Other thing, view, yeah, it doesn't care. The web view doesn't care. You can give it any HTML, any CSS, JavaScript that's flattened out. It'll render it just fine. So yeah, everything is welcome. Now, it's 8 p.m. Lee and other folks, do I have 2 more minutes? Can I borrow 2 minutes of your time?
The meeting is at 8:30, so.
Oh, I see.
We're
Okay,
good. We're good. Yeah.
All right, I was rushing for 8, but okay, maybe 5 minutes we'll wrap it up anyways. We can have more of a conversation. You can tell me you hate all of this stuff. That's fine too. Let's talk about mixing and matching a little bit more here. Let's start with this. Let's say you have a Windows Forms project or a WPF project, right? And that's kind of what is running your business. And you see all of this cool stuff and you're like, yeah, I just don't want to drop all of what I have and recreate this in a .NET MAUI project. It's just too expensive. And yes, you have a point. You don't have to. So it turns out that web view that I showed you, that is an abstraction that knows how to render the web view for every platform. If you are on Windows, though, and again, WPF and Windows Forms apps are meant for Windows, the web view it's rendering is actually called Webview 2. You can actually get this as a separate component. You don't have to have the Blazerwebview. You don't have nothing to do with .NET MAUI whatsoever. So here's a WPF project, which started out with .NET Framework. I've migrated that over to, you can see the compatibility. I've moved it over to run on .NET 6. And I have a references here. If I can zoom in, you can see that I'm bringing in that Webview 2. Either WinForms or WPF, either one of them will do. And I have a reference to that. And then I have a docking panel. All I'm doing is launching that web view inside of my WPF app, and I'm just pointing it to a URL, right? So what's going to happen if I launch this? This might be the dirtiest hack that you do, but it's the lowest hanging fruit. If you have a web app that is already running, that's your line of business app, you can just launch it entirely inside of your WPF app. That's a WPF app, just loading up a whole web page right there, right? You don't see any other UI because the entire thing is taken over by that web view. So you can do this, but this may not be very, realistic for you to just point to a different app. So what is a little bit more realistic is if you kind of have these things coexist together. So let's do this one here. Now, same idea. This is still a WPF project, but here I am actually bringing in the web view, which I can also do the web view too, if you want to call that. But here I'm actually pointing it to a specific Blazor component, that being the counter component. So if I show you the counter app or the counter.razor component, Visual Studio is being slow, but you see the exact same component, right? So this is exactly what I'll have for the web, but now it's just dropped inside of a WPF app. And what I've done here is I've not brought over anything else, right? So I have no styling, I have no main page layout, I have no CSS, and that counter is a Blazor counter, right? And if I didn't tell you, you would not believe that that's a web component because that looks kind of like a little lame, like a desktop counter, right? So what I'm doing here is that dropping in that Blazor view right inside of my WPF or WinForms app and just, starting the process of modernization with a tiny bit of island of, modernness. And I can render web stuff on top of WPF or WinForms, which I think is, it's a nice way of looking at things. What else? Let me show you this here. This one here is a .NET, what type of project is it? Oh, it's a .NET MAUI project, but let's say you are bringing in some dependencies from your Blazor, right? In this case, I'm showing you, again, Telerik, not to show you our stuff, but just to show you that any other component, any other dependency that you might have for web, that's all just fine to bring it into .NET MAUI. So all I've done here is my imports Blazor has a couple of extra components, and my Maui.program.cs has just one line of service registration to say, hey, I'm using this other component library. And beyond that, I can do index.html. And oh no, that's just bringing in some style sheets, and index.razor is what I wanted to show you. So Razor view, pure Blazor, but I'm bringing in a button, I'm bringing in a barcode. So any Blazor components you might have, any Angular components you might have, or React components, it's all welcome. We'll let this one fire up, and then I will stop and have all of you chime in and see what questions you might have. Excuse me. It's going to be a little slow because it's Tuesday for Visual Studio. But any questions, anything that kind of strikes you as odd or exciting, feel free to chime in and chat. It is trying to deploy. So same exact .NET MAUI project, but you see that barcode, that's the Blazor barcode, right? So we actually did some experiments around this just to kind of prove a point. Let's see if I have that GitHub repo bookmarked. Yeah. So any of the Blazor stuff that we make or anybody else makes that you're bringing in, it's all fine. So we ran some experiments. Like this is all of our Blazor UI with the grids, the heavy charts, and the graphs, everything that we do for Blazor. All of it runs just fine on .NET MAUI, runs just fine on WinForms or Wpf. So it's a nice modernization story that you can bring in Blazor and start in pieces, start updating your code base to something a little bit more modern. Oh, Rob, thank you for good stuff. Maui support for Wear US. Sean, it's not there yet officially, but things are starting to work. You can deploy the .NET MAUI app to Android watchOS. iPhone or the Apple Watch, not quite yet, but Xamarin Forms had support for Wear OS, and so it's and all of the wearables. So it's only a matter of time before .NET MAUI will support all of it, because I mean it has all the things to run on the watch. Some of the UI obviously has to be modified, because now you're looking at something as tiny as your watch and the same app running on desktop. So obviously you have to cater to some responsiveness maybe, but otherwise it's very welcome. So yeah. It's dinner time, or maybe you have to head out. So I completely get it. I actually have to have dinner as well because I didn't eat. But let's stop here. Hopefully, what you're seeing here is all the ammunition that we have as developers to to mix and match, move our application forward, move our code bases forward. I love all the ammunition. And let's go change the world. And that's me again. If you need to get hold of me, I'm pretty much always online. So thank you so much for spending an hour and a half with me, Lee, and everybody else. Thanks for having me here. Really appreciate it.